We remember the life of Minnesota Vikings cornerback Khyree Jackson, who tragically passed away over the weekend. All that and more coming up next year on this episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher. I'm the host of Locked On Ravens and one of the many NFL experts here on our network, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On NFL a part of your day and your first listen each and every day are free and available on all podcasting platforms. That includes in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you get your shows. Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As playoffs wind down, the sport stops sporting like we want them to, but this summer FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we are back on today's show. We are going to be remembering the life of Minnesota Vikings cornerback Khyree Jackson. He was tragically killed in a car accident over the weekend. So Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings will be just taking us through the person that Khyree was and how he should be remembered. Then in the second part of the show, we'll talk with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots. There is another Patriots extension in the book, so we'll talk about that with him. And then finally, Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos will join us to talk about the Denver Broncos, if they are being slept on or not. So without any further ado, let's first get into our conversation with Luke Braun of Locked On Vikings. Tragedy struck the NFL world on Saturday as Vikings fourth-round cornerback Khyree Jackson was killed in a car accident alongside two other former defensive backs. Here to talk about Khyree and remember him as a person is Luke Braun, the host of Locked On Vikings. And Luke, it was a shocking, terrible, tragic turn of events here for such a bright light in the world. The player that I know had one of the best stories coming out of college in this draft, worked extremely hard to get to where he was, and his life just cut so tragically short here. In your short time covering him for the Vikings, what are you going to remember about him as a person in the bright light that he was?
You know, he had quite an impact on a lot of players that worked with him for literally 2 weeks. Really the only, it was just OTAs, right? So a lot of these players only knew this guy for 13 days, 13 practice days. And he really left an impression. Just one of these very bright and boisterous kind of guys. And everybody really liked that energy. There was this kind of bubbly positivity, I guess, that I think left an impression on people. Even, and that's to say nothing about people like Dallas Turner, who played with him at Alabama, or some of his other college teammates that are elsewhere in the league, or maybe even not, that all remember him as coach, that remembers this, very, very kind person that was always kind of unapologetically himself. Somebody who is, there's an authenticity, I guess, is the word I'm looking for.
And I know that in terms of his actual story, there's been so much made of it because it was so inspirational and so incredible of him, working at a deli and not really knowing if football was going to be the path that he would end up going for, but obviously was very talented and used those talents, believed in himself, and worked his way up to the Vikings, to an NFL player. Can you kind of go through what his journey was leading up to that point and why it's so inspirational?
Yeah, so if you want a quicker or a more comprehensive, there's a special that went up on Saturday on the Locked On Vikings feed that kind of tells it all. But the broad strokes are, so coming out of high school, he didn't have good enough grades to get D1. He could have gone D2 or go to JUCO and try to kind of make the leap that way. So he chose the JUCO route. Now, he had a lot of D1 interest, but he just didn't have the grades, so nobody could give him a scholarship. So he does the JUCO route. He just isn't quite ready to be that far from home. So he ends up coming home after, I think, maybe one game. Spends a year completely out of football. I mean, he's working at a deli. He's basically, it kind of feels like that's it. But it is not it in his mind, although he does start getting a little bit more into playing NBA 2K and wants to go pro there for a second. But he's also still sending emails out to other community colleges saying, here's who I am, here's my situation, here's my tape, what can we do here? And eventually Fort Scott Community College sends him an email. There he puts up tape that is good enough to get him into East Mississippi Community College, which you know from Last Chance U, if that sounds familiar to you. But it's the COVID year. So it's like, okay, here's another thing that's in the way. So that he doesn't actually have a season at East Mississippi, but he's done well enough at Fort Scott to get all those D1 people back talking to him. And his grades are up, and so everybody can offer him scholarships now. He gets like 33 offers. He's just like super, like, there is this never give up to it, and I'm skimming through this, that is so inspirational. They're like 99.9% of stories end at some point in that, where you go, all right, well, I dropped out of community college, and then I had to make my way, and and now I'm a dentist. Like, that's just like how it goes. But like having that kind of perseverance and this inner confidence of knowing, well, I'm going to make it eventually. Like I'll make it to the end. This is just in the way, right? Like this is just a stop on the way. The only time he ever really flirted with something else was the 2K thing. But once he got back into football, he was all the way back into football. And then he goes to Alabama for a couple of years, transfers to Oregon, and that kind of leads him to Minnesota. And even though obviously he never, we never got to see how his NFL career played out. I think there's still something we can take from that, which is to be really proud of what you've already done and not have to, because he can be really proud of what he already did, going D1 and playing well enough to earn an opportunity at all in the NFL. And I think this goes out to any rookie in the NFL, even the longest long shot undrafted guys. That is something worth being proud of, and being proud of like where your feet are, not necessarily always having to look toward what the next step has to be and like comparing yourself to that. I think there's a lesson we can take there,
Yeah, and there are so many steps to who Khyree Jackson was and how he got to where he was. But Luke, how should Khyree Jackson be remembered? There's all this positive light being shed on him, and rightfully so, based off of his journey. But when we look back on Khyree Jackson, the person, and how inspirational he was, what should the message be, and how do you want to remember him?
I think you have to listen to the people that knew him closely, not only his family, but his coaches and teammates, and people that he went to school with and all that all describe him as somebody that you just couldn't stop being around, I guess is a way to kind of synthesize all of that. He was just a lot of fun, infectious smile, all that stuff. And posthumously, you will hear those phrases a lot. Oh, he lit up a room and all that is like kind of the cliche that you'll always hear about somebody when you're talking about it this way. But I really believe that it's true. And it's not just something that people are saying. That kind of infectious positivity, especially in a football locker room, one as intense as, the SEC or Oregon, right? Like that kind of energy is so important when there's a lot of reasons to maybe be negative because you just lost to Washington or whatever. And keeping that energy no matter what, and being true and authentic, your true and authentic self no matter what. Like he always, he was never a guy that felt like he needed to put on a front for you. He was just going to make the jokes he makes. He's going to be the guy that he is and take it or leave it. And I think is the way to remember somebody.
Luke with incredible insight on Khyree Jackson. And for more on Luke and Khyree Jackson's life and remembering Khyree, be sure to check out Luke over on the Locked On Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots. The Patriots locked down another extension. We'll talk about that and so much more coming up next year on Locked On NFL. First, this show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel's hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So in the MVP race in the MLB, Gunnar Henderson here in Baltimore is a very big part of that. Also Aaron Judge. There are a bunch of other guys as well. If you want to get in on that action, head over to FanDuel. Also in the NFL, the Ravens open up against the Chiefs, 2.5-point underdog. So if you want to get in on that action, FanDuel has it covered. Head over to FanDuel.com to start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. We're back our second segment of Locked On NFL. Kevin Ostreicher still talking with you here on this Monday. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in here today, making Locked On NFL a part of your day and your first listen each and every day. Be sure to make Locked On Sports Today a part of your day as well with Peter Bukowski as he takes you through all of the sports world and the sports landscape, the biggest stories of the day and of the week. So that, of course, is also part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. But now we'll talk with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots. The Patriots, just extension after extension. Another one hit the books for New England. We'll talk with Mike about that now. Well, the New England Patriots just will not stop signing players to extensions, but it's good for this show because that means we have Mike Debate on, the host of Locked On Patriots, who does a phenomenal job covering New England and has been with us every step of the way on every single one of these Patriots extensions. And Mike, another one in the books for New England. Might not have been the player everybody was hoping it would be, but you have a guy in Jahlani Tavai here who gets a modest contract extension here. Can you kind of go through the details of the Tavai extension and why New England decided to make this move?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And I'm so glad that somebody like a Jahlani Tavai is able to get the extension that he got. I know a lot of Patriots fans, and I think a lot of NFL fans took a look at that and said, wow, it's a lot of guaranteed money for, a guy we don't hear the name that often. But look, Jahlani Tavai the last couple of years has become such a key element of this New England Patriots defense. The way he knows his position, the way he plays his position, and his ability to kind of keep everyone else in line really kind of falls into that type of Juwan Bentley, role where you see these guys in the middle part of that defense really take it over and be versatile weapons that can not only be effective against the run, but also effective against the pass. Jahlani Tavai is an extremely smart football player, and he's a great locker room guy and a great guy to have in this lineup. So from a New England Patriots standpoint, extending him for 3 years definitely gives him the opportunity to make his mark and to keep his stamp on this defense. I think it's great all the way around, and I think the cash is something the Patriots obviously had the ability to do with the cap space that they have, and I think they looked at it as an opportunity to reward a player that definitely deserves it and has paid his dues.
Yeah, when you have a rookie quarterback, you can extend a lot of guys based off of now how these quarterback contracts work. When a guy's on a rookie deal, you have a lot of cap space to work with. So totally agree with you, Mike. But in terms of Tavai and the player that he is, you mentioned some of the stuff that he brings to the table. What do you expect his role to be post-extension? Do you expect it to change under Gerard Mayo? Do you think that with him already being in the Patriots coaching system and having worked with Tavai, it's not going to change very much?
No, I really don't expect his role to change all that much. Look, the one thing that we've been hearing about the Patriots and all the upheaval and all the changes that they're going to be experiencing on the offensive side of the ball, and believe me, there are a lot that we haven't even seen yet. Defensively, under DeMarcus Covington and Gerard Mayo, we're hearing that they're not going to really reinvent the wheel. So I would continue to look for Jahlani Tavai to be as effective against the run, effective against the pass, someone who can shoot up, play along the line if he needs to, someone that can drop back into coverage. He does have the ability to do all of those. He's a versatile weapon for this New England Patriots defense and has been for a number of years now. Really kind of grew into what the Detroit Lions thought they were getting when they selected him a few years ago in the second round. This guy was definitely a blue chip athlete. They had high hopes for him. Wasn't a fit there. It ended up being a good fit for New England. So now it's up to the Patriots to really cultivate that. But I really don't expect to see him, change his role at all. You're still going to see him get in there, breaking up passes. He'll get after the quarterback. He'll get a few sacks. He'll continue to be a tackle machine. Set a career high at 110 tackles last year. I look for him to eclipse that total. And he's going to be a stalwart in special teams as well. This is a guy who's played a good amount of special teams, 359 snaps in the kicking game last year. That's a little high for a guy that is such a key part of your defense. You don't want to see him get in there and get hurt, but just goes to show you how versatile and how intelligent of a football player Jelani Tavai is to deserve that type of an extension.
And I know I mentioned earlier it was not the player that people were expecting to get the extension, and maybe that the Patriots fans wanted. Obviously, you know who I'm talking about, Mike. That is Matthew Judon,
Absolutely.
who that Patriots deal is coming to a close here, and he is extension eligible, but nothing has been set in stone. Judon ended up putting out a somewhat cryptic tweet over the last week, and obviously that got all the wheels turning with everybody. Do you still expect the Judon extension to happen? Do you maybe think that this could go into the season, or do you think there's a shot that Judon maybe gets traded or hits the free agent market?
I think everything right now is on the table. And if you asked me this question a couple of weeks ago, Kevin, I would have said it's only a matter of time before they extend Matthew. To me, this is such a hand in glove fit and a really easy decision for the New England Patriots, at least in my opinion. You're looking at a guy that is arguably the face of the franchise right now. Bill Belichick is no longer walking through the doors in New England. Tom Brady, it's been a long time since he's walked through those doors and put on a Patriots uniform. You don't have guys like Gronkowski and Edelman to be the face of your franchise any longer. Drake May will eventually become that, but he's not that right now. He may not get the start to begin the season. So when you think of the New England Patriots and you think of who's going to go up on that placard on Sunday Night Football and who are they going to show, it's going to be Matthew Judon. It's going to be the red. It's going to be the red sleeves. It's going to be the number 9 jersey, the charismatic leader of this locker room. But beyond that, this guy is such a hand in glove fit for the New England Patriots defense and is such a key cog in what they do. Not only is Matthew a facilitator for pass rushers like Joshua Uche, who really fed off of Matthew a couple of years ago and set a career high in sacks with 11.5 when Matthew set his own at 15.5. So these are players that absolutely count on him to do his job and to be there and to be a weapon that takes sometimes the double team or attention from the opposing offenses. Then you also look right now at what he's capable of doing when he aligns close to Christian Barmore. If he does and Christian is left open one-on-one, he can win those battles. He can put pressure on the quarterback. More often than not, Christian will take the double team, even if it's for a split second or two. That gives Matthew that reaction time to get around, get after the quarterback, and make life miserable for opposing quarterbacks and offenses. So to me, logistically, Matthew Judon is a guy that you not only want him on the field, you need him on the field because of everything he does. It's a little bit of a head scratcher right now that he and New England can't come to an agreement, but obviously Matthew has a number he's got in mind, and until the Patriots meet that, things may continue to be at an impasse. We'll see what happens. But to me, this is one that I would look for to happen. If it doesn't happen during training camp, then I think you're really looking at either Matthew playing out the string or maybe being moved at the trade deadline.
Well, outside of Matthew Judon, Mike, is there any other Patriots player or players that you can see getting extended in the near future, maybe during the season, or maybe we can even jump into the offseason next year and what that could bring?
Right now, I think the offseason is still a little bit up in the air. The Patriots have a number of players now under contract. I think what they're going to look for next season is that opportunity to maybe go after and utilize that money to go after specialists, maybe a top flight receiver or a top flight left tackle if they don't go that route in the NFL draft. But two guys I would keep an eye on that are not named Matthew Judon into training camp and heading into the season are safety Jabril Peppers. Don't forget, Kyle Duggar recently got a contract extension. I know the Patriots are very high on keeping these guys together in that defensive backfield. He could be one who could earn his way to a contract extension. Some will tell you he arguably already did that with a great season last year. And maybe a lesser name to think about, but certainly not when it comes to the Patriots, is special team stalwart Brendan Schooler. For years, Matthew Slater patrolled that special teams unit, and he did so well. They don't have Matthew in that unit anymore. He will still continue to be a coach and a voice on the sidelines, but he's not going to be in there. That role belongs to Brendan Schooler now. It's such an important role, especially with a new special teams coordinator in Jeremy Springer. You want a guy that's locked up and does that job well. He could be the next one in line for a contract extension as well.
Mike always gives us that great Patriots insight. And for more on Mike, check him out over at the Locked On Patriots podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up in the final part of the show, Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos will join us to talk about if Denver's being slept on. Stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On NFL. First, this show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and love that peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style. eBay Motors has it covered. With over 120 million parts, so number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Elsewise, low exclusion supply, eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. We're back here rounding out Locked On NFL. Kevin Ostreicher talking with you still on this Monday. Really appreciate everybody again for being here today. Be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. We're building up this community here on Locked On NFL, also in audio form, where obviously we have your podcast available anywhere you decide to get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, the whole 9 yards. They really appreciate everybody who tunes in, whether in video form or audio form. It's the same show, both audio and video. Now, we're going to talk with Sayre Bedinger of Locked On Broncos. And if the Broncos are being slept on, we'll talk with Sayre now. The Denver Broncos are undergoing a bit of a franchise transformation with a new franchise quarterback in Bo Nix, and high hopes for the future. Here to talk about that with me is Sayre Bedinger, one of the hosts of Locked On Broncos. And Sayre, I know that this might not be Denver's year in terms of a Super Bowl championship, but there are a lot of building blocks that Denver does have for the long term. In terms of their outlook for this season, though, I've seen a lot of discourse about how Denver is going to be one of the worst, if not the worst teams in the NFL this season. And while that might not be hosting the Lombardi Trophy, do you think the criticism or the discourse around Denver has been a little harsh this offseason?
I do. I think it's been really harsh. I know I've seen them ranked as the worst roster in the league, power rankings on as the content mill churns this time of the year. They're always near the bottom or at the bottom. And so I get it too. I mean, I understand they cut a lot of high profile guys, Russell Wilson, Justin Simmons, traded Jerry Jeudy. And to me, I think that there's a couple of things that really raised the floor for this team. Number one is Sean Payton, who I know is a bit of a controversial subject for a lot of people. There's some people who just don't like him and don't necessarily think of him in that way as like adding wins to a team. But I feel like Sean Payton raises the floor for the team, as well as, I mean, I don't know, this may be a hot take. I feel like the Broncos did get better at the quarterback position. Now we're kind of in wait and see mode there, but anybody who watched the Broncos last year understands that the quarterback play was holding the team back. Russell Wilson taking a lot of sacks, not sustaining a ton of drives. Really, that winning streak that happened was taking advantage of turnovers created by the defense, getting a bunch of extra possessions all throughout that, 5-6 games, whatever that was. And so it's not that he did nothing. I don't mean to diminish to that. And certainly he's a godsend for the Pittsburgh Steelers based on what they had. But I think the Broncos are going to get better at quarterback this year, which to me, I mean, that raises all the rest of the boats in the harbor.
Yeah, and speaking of Bo Nix, I know that, Sayre, there's only so much you can take away from OTAs and minicamp. No pads on. It's kind of more laid back in some senses. But what did you see? What did you hear about Bo Nix and his performance so far through these workouts? As again, we're getting really close to training camp.
Yeah, I heard a lot of great things. I mean, there was a lot of people that said Jarrett Stidham kind of, maybe just a slight edge in terms of his overall experience shining through at OTAs. But like, I don't think Bo Nix had a lot of bad days. And I think there was 5 camp practices open to the media this year. And I don't think there was ever a time that anyone said, hey, Bo Nix had a really rough day today. I mean, he looked off. I mean, everything that we've heard about him, which is, man, he's coming into the NFL. He should be rather experienced, right? He's played 61 college games and he's the oldest rookie quarterback since Brandon Weeden in 2012 at 24 years of age. And so he should look like more polished than other rookies coming in. And that's been the case. I mean, Sean Payton talking him up, Davis Webb, the quarterback's coach, really talking him up, Joe Lombardi. every player on the roster that's had a chance to speak on him. I know that's kind of the thing this time of year, but at the same time, it just feels like this is progressing really well for him. So a good OTAs from Bo Nix, and something that I think Broncos fans can be optimistic about. Like, the buzz is actually building. When Paxton Lynch was in the building, there was no buzz. When Brock Osweiler was, later in his career getting more reps, there was no buzz. There was nothing. Drew Lock, no buzz. You heard Vic Fangio even said at one point at Drew Lock's training camp in his rookie year, he's like, he's a pitcher out there that doesn't know how to pitch, right? And so you have the complete opposite with Sean Payton saying, like, Bo Nix is he's like a boring golfer out there, right? He's just like, why is he so good at this? Like, that doesn't make sense. You see somebody who's good at golf, you're like, that jerk, like, why has it come so easy to them, right? That's kind of what the vibe is from Bo Nix, is like, he just makes playing the position look a little too easy. Not to say he's going to go out there, throw 55 touchdowns or break Peyton Manning's record. I'm not trying to use hyperbole or anything here, but man, he sounds like the real deal. And it sounds like the Broncos got themselves finally a potential franchise QB.
Yeah, boring golfer might be the best compliment I have ever heard.
Yeah,
that's a new one. That's a good one. But for Nick, Sayre, I know we talked about it a little bit right after the draft, you and I, about expectations for Bo Nix, but that was before we really knew how the rest of Denver's roster would take shape. Would they move off of Courtland Sutton? Would they add any other pieces? Now that we are just a couple weeks away from training camp, have your expectations changed for Bo Nix? Have they maybe increased based off of the buzz you've been hearing? What's kind of your overall stance on him right now?
I think the expectations are higher than what they may usually be for a rookie, and certainly for the Denver Broncos. There's not been many reasons to be confident. Let's just put it that way. I mentioned Paxton Lynch and Drew Lock and those types of guys. Like, those are the two last quarterbacks the Broncos. The only Broncos quarterback to be drafted by the team and win a playoff game is Tim Tebow. And I know there's technicalities there with John Elway. He was traded on draft night or whatever. So, he never played for the Colts, but like, Tim Tebow is the only quarterback drafted by the Broncos to win a playoff game. So, like, what reason should Broncos fans have to be confident in Bo Nix? Well, I think the expectations have been raised based on people who are, they don't have any skin in the game, saying like, this guy looks really good out there. And I just think that really has caused fans the optimism in Broncos country, which was non-existent before, has at least there's at least some, motion on the old heart rate monitor there, right? It's no longer flatlining. The optimism, it's got some life to it. And I think that's because of Bo Nix.
Yeah, and I think because of the hype and optimism around him, I think Denver fans maybe are starting to believe a little bit, at least more than they had, in guys like Russell Wilson, especially during that second year. But Sayre, do you think that this is a potential sneaky playoff team? This AFC conference is a gauntlet. You're going to have to get through a lot of teams to get there, whether it's a wild card berth or if you maybe pull off the upset of the center here for Denver and knock off the Chiefs in the AFC West, which, again, we're getting a little bold and crazy. Do you think that Denver can make a push for the playoffs, or do you think that might be a thing we can talk about a couple years down the line?
I hope they're in the conversation in December. Like, I hope you and I are having a conversation at that point, just like this last year. It would have been foolish to expect the Broncos to be in the playoff race after what we saw with Nathaniel Hackett in 2022, right? When Russell Wilson was injured a lot of the year, playing hurt, had more bathrooms in his house than touchdown passes, all those things. The Broncos won 5 games, got obliterated on Christmas Day, fired Nathaniel Hackett before his rookie coaching season was even done. Like, for that team to come out the next year and win 8 games and be in the playoff, be in a game out of first place in December again with the Chiefs, right? Like you said, that's insane. And to me, I know that this is not necessarily always the case, but it's crazy to me to think that this Broncos team that won 8 games last year, you look at the roster on paper right now, to say that it's that much worse, that they would be closer to the number 1 pick in the draft than to maybe competing for one of 7 spots in the AFC. I know I'm the eternal optimist. You know that, Kevin, of all of our many conversations, but I just feel like this team is much closer to a 9-win team than a 3-win team. Or I've seen people on Twitter say they're not going to win any games. It's crazy to me how low the expectations are, which I kind of don't mind, because I'd rather people not be talking about the Broncos in such a way that's like, man, they're going to be one of the most disappointing teams this year. I'd rather it be surprising in a good way. And I think they do have a chance to do that.
Sayre's great. And for more on Sayre, check him out over at the Locked On Broncos podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Here, your team every single day. That's all I have here today on Locked On NFL. Thank you so much for tuning in. Coming up tomorrow, more NFL content with your Tuesday host. So be sure to stay tuned. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On NFL.